Part It was harder until you gave us a high price. How are you? Good. How are you? Better after we noticed. You noticed. Before it wasn't me. It was already Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Hi. 5 o'clock. Welcome. Nice to see you all. Welcome to the Select Board meeting for January 7th, our first one this year. I'm Tyler Ward. With me are Bill Kennedy and Bill Taylor, other Select Board members. We have Nicole McStair, Town Administrator here, and Jennifer Malone is watching AI take notes.
Oh my God.
I'm going to review on that.
That's fine. I like it.
So welcome. We have a pretty good agenda tonight, and then at 5:30 or soon thereafter, we're going to convene a Select Board / Budget Committee gathering and on that process for the next month and weeks. Tonight's agenda. Oh, we are on air. And anybody that has any questions or would like to speak, just raise your hand, and when I choose you, someone chooses you, just state your name for the record so you can be captured for the minutes. We are being recorded as always, and these meetings are archived for future viewing. Tonight's agenda, we have Jonah Wheeler and Peter Leishman, our state reps here, to bring us up to date on the coming legislative season. And then we're going to discuss an agreement with the hospital for a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. And then consideration for the proposed revaluation contract with a new contractor. And then we have some trust fund monies to expend and appointment to a rec committee and minutes to approve. So with that, welcome Jonah and Pete.
Thanks.
Great to see you.
Sure, it's up to you. Go first. Is it all right to sit here, or?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so Jonah.
Stand up to look at the people.
Yeah. Here's your constituents. Your constituents are back here.
That's not a
Sit down if you want.
So Joan and I both received a number of concerns, complaints, emails, phone calls about the tax rate. And several people that I ran into at the recycling center one day really chewed my ear off, thinking the state should do more than we are doing. And so I reached out to the Department of Revenue Administration just to see where Peterborough stood as far as other communities. And much to my surprise, the Department of Revenue, the commissioner, sent me an email back that Peterborough stands at one of the top towns in the state for taxes. And our municipal tax rate is about third ranking in the state. So I can see why people were kind of concerned about the tax rate, because we are a little higher than our surrounding communities. And so what can we do as a state? Well, unfortunately, the news isn't good right now. The state is suffering a decline in revenues. We anticipate revenue decline of about $500 million this next year and $500 million next year, which will lead to significant cuts at the state level, which will probably impact what is sent back to the local communities as far as revenue sharing, flood control payments. As some of you know, Peterborough receives a substantial amount of money, about $70,000 or $80,000 from the state for the McDowell Dam, in consideration of that land has been taken, if you will, from the town, or the town tax rolls. So what's causing some of this impact that Joan and I are trying to deal with in the legislature? And I serve on the Finance Committee and the Joint Legislative Fiscal Committee, which we handle all state funding and the budgets. And right now, we've lost the interest and dividends tax, which is $184 million a year. That's what it took in last year. That is gone. So we're going to see that impact. Our revenues right now are down $96 million so far this year. And we run from July 1st to June 30th. So we're in the second half of the second year of the biennium. So there again, $100 million shy so far, and we're got another 6 months to go. Liquor revenues are also down, and dry January probably isn't gonna help that either. Also, we're seeing more and more litigation from the Youth Development Center. You've probably heard the state has already paid out over $160 million. And we anticipate setting another $75 million a year aside for that. So you start adding up that number, and what Jonah and I thought the folks in Peterborough should be aware that the state's financial position is not very good right now. I've been in the legislature now 13 terms, and probably this is our worst budget situation since the Great Recession. We're receiving no more federal funds. We were receiving billions, again with a B, every year in federal funds. Those are gone. So we're gonna kind of stick on our own track. One of the questions that's been raised to me, what about this lawsuit, the Conval lawsuit? We don't anticipate a decision on that probably for months, so that won't have any impact on the budget. But my Republican friends, I've asked several of them on finance, if that is a ruling against the state as far as providing more funds, where do you anticipate getting that money? And they said probably a statewide property tax. And that would be bad news for a town like Peterborough, because that would be more money taken from Peterborough to, send off to the other communities around the state. But at this point, Jonah and I are in the minority, so our colleagues on the Republican side want to cut even deeper, and because we're at least 42 seats in the minority, unfortunately, as much as Jonah and I think we could change the world, it's going to be difficult this time around. So if it's all right, I'm certainly happy to take any questions or sit down and let Jonah speak. Yes.
So the interest in dividends, what's the deal with that?
Hello? Hi. Can you just introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry.
For the minutes, please.
Yeah, I'm Bev Spiro, I'm just a resident.
Excellent.
But yeah, the interest in dividends, what's the deal that that's no longer collectible?
The legislature voted last year to accelerate the ultimate removal. I think it was going to extend another year or two. It was declining as far as the tax rate, but the legislature voted last time, in the last budget, to do away with it, accelerate it. So the interest and dividends tax is gone as of the 31st of December. So the state will no longer be collecting interest and dividends as far as the tax. So a lot of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle consider that an income tax, which it kind of is, and they wanted to eliminate an income tax for sure, as they see it from the state, as a revenue source. Well, that was easy, only one question. Uh-oh, Loretta just had her hand up. Okay.
I was just wondering if there's going to be any more review of the, the educational voucher program. And I was disturbed when I read that the school in Peterborough receives vouchers was receiving $9,000 a year per student, whereas our public school system receives apparently around $4,300. So is there going to be any,
I could let
looking at
Jonah
that
speak.
again?
Yeah, I could let Jonah speak to that, because Jonah actually filed some legislation in the past dealing with education funding, and certainly knowledgeable on where that stands.
Well, I mean, similar to the other things, it's up to the majority of the votes on the floor, and unfortunately, the Republicans have the majority this year, so I doubt we'll see anything around EFAs happen. But part of what I also wanted to say in coming today to speak to the people is, first of all, thank you for re-electing Peter and I for another 2 years in the State House. I think despite how chaotic it is up there in Concord, both he and I can confidently say that we enjoy being up there in the legislature. I mean, I don't think you would spend 13 terms in a place that you didn't enjoy, so there has to be some...
I have a screw loose.
Right, exactly. It would be a little crazy to be up there. But thank you so much. And these are going to be a tough 2 years. The Democratic Party failed unequivocally in these last 2 years. The election, which was completely winnable, let's be clear, we could have won it on every level, was lost on every level. And that happened, in my opinion, because the Democratic Party lacks leadership. And we see it in the caucus, we see it throughout the state, and can I speak? We see it in the caucus, and we see it in the state. Part of what I wanted to answer your question, and kind of what got looped into that, is when I brought up throughout the last 2 years the EFA program and the fact that everywhere I go, I hear, I want that program repealed. I want it gone. I don't want to be spending my tax dollars on religious, private, or homeschool institutions. I brought that to the leadership of the caucus, and I said, all right, when are we going to propose the repeal to the EFAs? What are we going to do around EFAs? And I was told that this biennium, we would not be proposing a repeal to the EFA program, and I was told that we wouldn't be doing that because it was out of fear of the Republican parents who are currently getting these dollars, who we wouldn't want to cause chaos for. It is my belief that the majority of parents in this state, just as in Tennessee and Texas and other places that voted on this on the ballot and voted in a bipartisan majority to stop this from happening, people don't want this in their state. Bipartisan majority of the people don't want this in their state. So why the leadership of the Democratic Party wouldn't jump on that issue is beyond me. And as a result, I say there is no leadership. As a result, I say because of the fact that Peter and I were punished for running for leader in this last term, I saw there was no leadership. And I heard from people, if it was just me, the 21-year-old kid saying, there's no leadership, maybe I'd think I was wrong. But it's Marjorie Smith, somebody who's been in there since 1990. It's Peter Leishman, somebody who's been in there since 96. It's people who have served in that building for 40 plus years who are coming to me and saying, Jonah Wheeler, you're the first person who makes me feel like we actually have a chance in restoring hope here in this state. I sit idly by as when I'm told that the current leadership is failing, that they're bullying members, that when someone goes to them and says something that has happened, that nothing happens as a result, that I am the leader that they're looking towards for hope and for courage in that moment. I ran for leader because I would be doing a wrong. I would be doing a moral injustice if I heard all of that from my members, my colleagues, and I didn't respond to it by running for leadership and trying to make a change in what I saw as failures in leadership, whether it be on education funding or any of the critical issues that we face in our state. The Democratic leadership were the leaders that helped and allowed Casella, the waste management industry, to write the legislation which would have allowed them to put a landfill on the Forest Lake here in this state. This is happening in the New Hampshire House of Representatives. So Peter and I, despite being members that get bullied by leadership and we get chagrined and we get taken out, we continue to be up there and out there, and we continue to work for the people. And this term, I was moved, my committee was moved. I served on the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee for the last 2 years, proud to serve on that committee. Hundreds of hours on a subcommittee, the bail subcommittee, working to make sure that our bail system was protected from those who want to roll back the reforms that happened in 2018, making sure that we worked on a whole host of different issues, hundreds of hours on bail, hundreds of hours on other issues. It was an amazing honor to be in that committee. And I, on that committee, working with Linda Harriet Gothright, the ranking member, and many other great Democrats, worked very hard in that last biennium to make sure that those issues passed. Unfortunately, Peter and I were punished, as I mentioned at the beginning, for running for leader and for bringing that message of the Democratic caucus that can work for all the members, that works and stands up for the unions beyond anybody else, that actually protects our environment. Instead of bringing us in and having us a conversation about what we can do as the elected leader, Alexis Simpson, the elected leader, we instead were not contacted and punished. And I now serve on Environment and Agriculture, and despite that being a punishment, I take that instead. And I take that very importantly, and despite it being under protest, it's a committee that I will serve on diligently. I will do everything I can to readjust to learn a whole new side of the law and start working to make sure that our environment is protected in this state. Because as I mentioned, we have Casella, the waste management industry, that's trying to place a landfill in Forest Lake. We have others, the St. Gobain problem in the waterways throughout the state. People like to say it's a Merrimack issue only. No, no, no. This is throughout the state. We have PFAS poisoning our water, poisoning our people as we speak, as we're all standing here right now. And we can't have leadership that's out there in the elections making it clear that the other side is 100% for them. I just don't believe that. I think if we can elect people that are out there that bring this spirit of courage, of conviction, a vision of the future that we can actually believe in, then people will support us, which is elections inherently. That's what elections are about. If you bring a message that people support, if you can bring something that makes them believe in what you're talking about, then you will win and you will get the mandate to go on and govern. And that is what Democrats need to do in these 2 years. I can't sit here and promise you that we're going to get anything done. I actually will say confidently that it's likely we don't. And Peter mentioned that we are $96 million down prior to the interest and dividends tax even being accounted for in those numbers, with 6 months left to go on the year. Where's the leadership talking about this in a coherent and organized way? I don't see it out there. So hopefully Peter and I and the hundreds of others members in the Democratic caucus that are doing the hard work to fill the vacuum of leadership that exists in the minority leadership, in the minority office, will continue to do that work. And while it may not be me, it will be somebody that's up there who runs for leader and gets that job done so that we can have that vision that makes people want to come out, support us, and give us the mandate so that we can govern in the next 2 years. The legislation that I have proposed in this next biennium, is legislation to annul the crime of people who were convicted over a cannabis charge. We got that legislation passed in the House with only 83 members voting against it last biennium. It was studied, moved to study in the Senate. I'm re-proposing that again because I have a belief that I'll be able to get it through the House, and we'll hope that we'll be able to get it to the Senate again with a new, different Senate majority around cannabis. We might actually have an interesting opportunity on those issues. And my second piece of legislation was around a constituent request. A group of parents from the district reached out to me and said that my kid is going to school way too early. And as somebody that was just in school not so long ago, I remember how early it was, getting up 6 a.m. to get on the bus and barely being awake and alive and having to go learn math in the middle of the day at 7 a.m. I don't think anyone wants to learn math at 7 a.m. So I have legislation to make a study committee around school start times and to start looking at how the state could expand that issue. So there's a lot of good things happening. I don't mean to bring a dreary message to you. The Democratic leadership, they are the leader. So we're going to work with them as hard as we can. Peter and I have been in constant communication over these last 2 weeks where we've really been in this moment of being punished, and we're hoping to have a meeting with her coming up soon to where we can iron out these issues. And as I said to her in my email this morning, burn a path to where each of us can walk adjacent, where while we might not solve some of these issues, my committee, I was moved from my committee without my ranking member's knowledge. Okay, so the leader on the Democratic caucus,
Wow.
exactly, wow. The leader of the Democrats on the committee was not informed by the larger Democratic caucus because she supported my return. So she was not informed. The other Democrats on the committee were not informed. This was a top-down decision, so hopefully we'll be able to iron these things out. I don't think the anger will subside from one conversation. It's a pretty tough thing that just happened, but we can hopefully make the path a little larger so that all of us who agree far more than we agree with those on the other side can start working together on these very serious issues that all of us are. I don't think you're here because you like to see our very beautiful faces, although maybe. I think you're here because the state is in a very chaotic and crisis mode, and we're looking for leadership. We're looking for someone to speak to the moment that us as a species, as a community, as a town are in. So thank you very much. I know I see you out there for the last 10 minutes holding your hand up high as I speak. So thank you.
I do have a question before others. When you write a piece of legislation like this, how much of your time, what kind of work goes into it? Who gets involved? How can citizens work with either of you with concerns to get legislation put forward? You mentioned people talking about schools too early. What about other issues? How does that work? Can you briefly explain that?
Absolutely. You can reach out to me via email. Both of my emails are on my website. One of them is jonah.wheeler@ledge.state.nh.us. The other one is much simpler, jonahwheeler28@gmail.com. Or call me, 603-831-9916. It goes right to my phone here. We can talk about the issue, and then there's a filing period the first year it's usually the first or second week of September. So throughout the year, we can work on the issue. What I did with the parents around the school time issue was we worked throughout the year, figured out whether or not it would be best to wait for the filing period or move forward on a non-germane amendment. Ultimately, we decided to move forward with the filing period and decided which way would be best, whether a committee or some kind of a mandate, or how we were going to work out the legislation itself. Worked it out to a committee, brought it to the legislative office building, and then OLS is the office that it goes to. It goes to OLS, and we work from there. It goes through their filtering process. There's time allowed for co-sponsorships, and then the speaker gets it. It gets assigned to a committee, and from there it's the committee's bill.
Okay. You can choose who.
Yeah?
Jonah and Peter, both of you, I'd like you to respond to this. Yesterday, I led another January 6th memorial, remembrance, whatever you want to call it. And I was surprised, it became a lot of conversation and discussion going way down from the federal level to the state level to the town level. People want in-person, not Zoom meetings. They want these issues discussed. There were myriads of issues, but going a lot of it to the false truth that's out on social media, out on every kinds of communications, and the public are buying the not real news. And we've got ourselves in quite a predicament for the next 4 years. What can we do to help you, to help us at the state level?
I think continuing to be out there and do those events like that throughout the next, I already hear the HB 44, the House Rule 44, thank you, where I can see a few people there who have sent me an email already, and I am so thankful that people are paying attention to that, because, they're trying to, you'll see on your list, you'll get sent emails throughout the next few months around the ridiculous legislation that will come up in committee. Sending an email goes a long way. You might not get a response from every representative. I hear all the time, you're the only person who's ever responded to my email. Somebody from Seabrook or Colebrook, people all across the state tell me that I'm the only representative that's responded to their email. So that, you might not get a response, but I can tell you that people read the emails and discuss them. Everyone will say, did you get the email from that person the other day? So send them an email. Call their representative. We're lucky to be able to have representatives so close to the people here, one for every 3,500 people. The phone number is usually on a website somewhere. Get in contact with them. Make sure your voice is heard. That's what I do.
Be engaged. That's the most important thing. We're lucky here in Peterborough because I think Peterborough is much more engaging than a lot of communities. Most of us up there try to respond to emails. You'll get responses from people in other districts. I know Jonah is very good. I try to be very particular, especially going through my emails, to respond to people from Peterborough and Sharon. And and I see some of the people that write to me quite often sitting in the back row and making sure
And get
they're voting
answers.
correctly.
We always get answers.
Yeah. But it's important to show up in Concord. If people don't show up, people don't think that if you're sitting on a committee up there that people care. But if the room is packed, they pay attention. So don't hesitate. You don't think, well, I'll send a letter or even an email. But if you can show up, people pay attention. So again, just being engaged, because a lot of folks in the state don't know what's going on. They don't. And it's surprising, until, they get their tax bill or something like that, and say, what's the heck's going on? But anyway.
But what's happened at a national level is coming up from us, and then from the top, coming slamming back at us, and we're in, what do we do? Because we can't go where we're headed.
So I have a question.
Hold on, Kate's had her hand up.
Kate Kuhn, Elm Street, and I want to be quick because I know we have other select board business, and you partially answered the question, but given that the leadership is Alexis Simpson, how will you be planning to work with her, and will you keep us apprised of how that, pathway starts to develop? Because we think that's really important. This is what we've got, and we want this to be productive.
Absolutely. And I would say, I plan on working with her by hoping that she opens the lines of communication with those who need to be communicated with. I hope that she, in the future, would reach out to Linda Harriet Gothright, the leader of the Criminal Justice Democrats, before making a decision regarding removal of one of her members. I would hope that Leader Simpson, instead of,
No, you just keep doing instead of. I want to hear the positives of what you're going to do with her.
Well, there's
well,
a
I'm
meeting.
just, before you,
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make it clear though, Kate. We have just,
Shut up.
sorry?
I'll shut up.
No, you were, no one was asking you to shut up. I just want to make it clear. For the last 2 weeks, Peter Leishman and I have been getting tirade emails and calls from leadership where we've been getting screamed at as we respond calmly to leadership. So what I would say, Kate, is I would hope that leadership stops yelling at us, because Peter and I have responded calmly, and I will send you the correspondence with leadership, because it has been extraordinarily calm. In fact, I'll release it to the public, because my correspondence has been trying to find the truth, to build a path to success. I was blindsided by members who wanted my return. A majority of the members on criminal justice supported my return, and they told me that. And then on the Monday prior to Christmas, I got a phone call from my leader, Alexis Simpson, telling me that I would no longer be on criminal justice. I called my ranking member, Linda Harriet Gothright, to say thank you for a very wonderful 2 years. I very much so respect the mentorship that you gave me over these last 2 years, yada, yada, yada. Linda Gothright, the leader of the Criminal Justice Democrats, told me she was not informed of this decision. And then from there, Peter Leishman and Linda Gothright started to give emails to Alexis Simpson, and we've gotten responses back. I have not reached out to Alexis other than just a few hours ago when I wrote her a letter explaining my side of the situation, and I'm happy to release that letter to the public because it goes through exactly what has happened. But just to be clear, I have made positive affirmations to try and start a meeting between Linda Gothright, Peter Leishman, and myself in person in the minority office so that we could work this out. And as far as I know, we were just received word not an hour prior to this meeting about a potential meeting that could happen. So we have been positively trying to build that bridge, and I'm sad to say that we have not gotten the same level of positive affirmation back. Janine?
Sorry, considering the time, we'll take 2 more questions.
Sounds good.
That'll work for you guys? That works. Thanks. Pick choice.
Okay, Janine Lesser, I'm a resident here, I'm also on the school board. Okay, so I have a request more than
Please.
a question, and thank you, Peter, I usually send them off and you've been very good at answering them. But one of the things that has been very difficult for school districts is the response to all the legislation that comes our way every year. We have to watch it, and we have the New Hampshire School Board Association that does a lot of that work, but even reviewing, I think there's even more
Yeah, it's
bills this year.
1,300 this year, up from 12.
And there's 2 new committees, one is education policy and the other education finance.
Yeah.
So we don't really know how that's going to work, but they're
Right.
new, so we'll be optimistic, I guess.
Yeah, so my request is, when you have the ability to speak against, or you need help in speaking against what I call nuisance legislation, legislation that isn't meant to do anything except to harass public school districts, I wish that you would contact me. Or if you're looking at a piece of legislation that you are considering supporting, or you think is a good idea, or even if you're writing please contact us. We'd be more than happy to work. And I can understand your frustration and, or the huge job that you have to do to review, like, all these bills and try to get a handle on them. And it's the same for us to try to do it, so it is really helpful when you reach out and say, hey, we're considering, like, I understand you're considering a bill to make parents responsible for their children when they've been,
Yeah, I filed some bullying legislation.
exactly, the
Yeah,
bullying
the
legislation.
Former superintendent of Conville asked me to file.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
Lisa, and we're no respondents for Lisa, so we'll see that goes. But we could tell you how that would potentially impact a district. You know, what's that gonna look like when it turns into policy and when it gets implemented, and whether it's gonna be a harm or it's gonna be a support.
Yeah, it hasn't been scheduled for a hearing yet, but I'll let you know.
Thank you, Peter.
Well, and Janine, I just want to say that is one of my criticisms with myself for that last term, and I'm definitely committing myself right here, right now, in front of the public, to letting people know when legislation is happening so that they can come out and testify.
Well, it's difficult.
It is difficult, and it's, when you were on criminal justice, and there's a million things coming at you, and he's on finance, and there's a trillion things coming at him, it is difficult, but I will commit to doing better this year. Diane?
Yes, so this whole thing about Rule 44, is there an opportunity for, you know, like someone like me to, you know, drive on up there and sit in a room and say, this is a bad idea to get rid, you know, is there a public forum for this yet?
Unfortunately, no, because it's a vote of the House on its own rules, so we don't do public, there's no need, there's no public hearing for House rules.
Okay, so even though it affects the public greatly?
Correct.
Okay.
But even though there is no public hearing, I think I've already responded probably 35 emails. And
People
more
know.
coming. People are aware of it, and there are even some Republicans, I spoke to one earlier today that's against it, because it takes the whole process away and gives the committee even more power to ignore the public and testimony. So.
Yeah, we're lucky that the Cornerstone Action Project, who I don't necessarily agree with all the time, in fact, at all, really, usually it's a right-wing organization, they're coming out and they came out against it, and they have a lot of sway for the Republican membership, and I've seen enough Republicans to where if the full Democratic caucus is against it, there's no way they can pass it.
Diane, could you just state your last name for the?
Oh, Kohler, Diane
you.
Kohler,
Thanks.
K-O-L-L-E-R.
Hey, I just wanted to say, Peter, yeah, thank you for your bullying legislation. I appreciate that. I read through it and I was impressed with how it was laid out. But this is geared towards schools and towards children. What about when the bullying comes from adults in forms of oppression of certain demographics of people? How and that are people are putting legislation forward. Let's say against transgender people. That's an issue that's really kind of that someone mentioned harassing people. There are issues about money that are really dire, but there are humanitarian issues that we're seeing that are, I think, more almost equally dire. How can that bullying effort be expanded to police the legislature for putting who's lobbying these people to come up with these horrible bits of legislation that are just, quite frankly, inhumane?
There is a lot of hate in the legislature. Not to criticize my colleagues, but there are people that have very different views than you and I do. And to answer you, very directly, that type of legislation, the way the legislature is made up in the Senate Senate's got a supermajority, I think it's 16-8. It just probably won't go anywhere. I'm hoping this legislation, at least bullying schools, goes somewhere. I wasn't able to get any Republican support, I don't believe, on it. There are a number of Democrats that signed on it, but we'll see what happens. The process is, difficult with all that, because you have to look around and what's the level of success. And there's another, getting off that subject, there's another very important bill, I think, that will impact Peterborough and the structures in Peterborough, and that's dams. So I filed legislation to provide more money for dam repair, because the state has over 250 dams, and most of them are in a hazard condition. And the state has about $20 million a year to maintain all these dams, and that usually only covers one dam. So I do have legislation there, and I actually have four Republicans on it, because it's going to become a crisis for towns that have a lot of dams like Peterborough has. But the message, I guess, I have to send out, and it's not election time, but you got to get out and get people involved in the next election. As Jonah said earlier, the Democrats shouldn't have lost so badly. We were only 5, I think, members shy in the last election or the last term, and we got a lot of things done. People were forced to work with each other and compromise. This year, again, to be very direct, we're going to get stepped on.
Just really quickly, though, to answer your question, you can, if you see a representative bullying, attacking, being unrepresentative-like, you can contact the Speaker's office or the Senate President's office, and that will get filtered to the Speaker's Advisory Committee, which everything gets either a hearing by the Speaker's Advisory Committee, the Speaker himself, or the Ethics Committee, and from there,
That's fair.
those things, there's some pretty strong punishments that happen.
Well, no, it's really the legislation that's being written. It's not somebody calling somebody a name or something.
Well, you'd be surprised. I actually have served on the Speaker Advisory Group for 3 terms, and we've actually dealt with bullying legislators.
I didn't deal with legislation that was perceived as bullying. I don't think there would be a way.
And Jonah was just appointed to the Speaker Advisory Board with me, and there were 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, and we review complaints and then make recommendations to the Speaker for disciplinary action.
You're supposed to be quiet about it.
Yeah, so it's kind of a secret.
Secret, not so secret. But thank you all so very much. We really appreciate everyone coming. I mean, this is amazing to see all these people come out. So thank you all. We'll be doing this regularly and staying in touch. So thank you very much. This is here. I like it.
You gotta do work.
Thank you, Jonah.
Jonah, I'll see you soon.
Okay, see you. It's nice to see you.
That was more about democratic leadership.
Their funding is declining. After the oh no.
They were gonna fix it. No, that's what's disappointing. How they were gonna make things better for Peterborough. So I'm a little disappointed. So there's a Monadnock Hospital doctor's office that may not have to and I eat it to it. And raise it down to here. To be honest, I was down my entire life.
And that really started me down.
Oh, yeah.
This is like sushi place.
You gotta keep going. You gotta keep going. Hello, everyone. I'm glad somebody brought you back to our meeting. It's supposed to be entertaining. You have a meeting to finish? See what happens. Hello.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we're adults, are we not?
We're still in a meeting in here, so if everyone could please move to the other side of the brown doors, we appreciate it. Thank you.
One little section.
All right. Let's get back to it. Up next, Nicole, you're gonna tell us about the pilot agreement with the hospital?
Happy to, if I can get this to keep working. So, Rich Bloom and I have been going back and forth, and Rich is here representing Monadnock Community Hospital, updating a payment in lieu of taxes agreement that the select board and the hospital first entered into in 2002. To say that that agreement would be considered deficient, or the language of that agreement would be considered deficient today would be an understatement. It really didn't address much of anything other than the fact that the hospital and the select board agreed on something. Didn't have a lot of the details that we would be looking for in any of our current pilot agreements. And so after a little bit of a negotiation, it was really quite amicable. We did come to the agreement that I've already sent out to you. Don't know if you have any questions about that for either of us.
Well, I read through it carefully. I think it's in good shape. But in Exhibit A, and maybe Laura can help me out with this, there are a bunch of TLAs. And other than MCH, I don't know any of those, what they refer to. Do we have a copy of Exhibit A to show?
Rich, you want to?
She's not gonna know.
I'm looking at my expert.
I'm the one who did that. When you say TLAs, Bill, what do you want?
3-letter acronyms?
Nice move.
There's also FLAs. But
So, for instance, the first one on there is our pediatrics practice, general surgery, gastroenterology. There's shell space, there's nothing in that now. Home hospice services, Monadnock family care. We did have to, that's MFC, we did have to this year hire our own cardiology practice because of our relationship with Catholic Medical Center, so that's MCH cardiology. MIM is Monadnock Internal Medicine, a conference room, again, PD. The main hospital, that's how it was listed on the tax cards, so I'm not 100% sure what that stands for. Then with the Wellness Center building, there's a MasterCard, when you go down, so oncology, physical therapy. MOA is Monadnock Orthopedics Associates, and MBH is Monadnock Behavioral Health. These are all practices where we employ everyone.
Other than that, do you want to spell out how it works?
Yeah, so it really doesn't change anything. So this is a list of the properties that Monadnock Community Hospital owns that are currently considered charitable. And so none of these are exempt from taxation. And so we have a standing agreement with Monadnock Community Hospital for payment in lieu of taxes of $15,000 a year. Monadnock Community Hospital does also own some residential properties. Those are fully taxed because they're not being put directly towards the charitable use. So nothing really changes. All this does is set a basis where the hospital and the town agree that this is the arrangement. This is the structure for that pilot agreement rather, and then just basically reiterates the state law, for the most part. This is, when it can be revisited. This is the kind of things that we're looking for documentation every year. Just really just sets that standards.
Great.
So leaving now.
The term is 5 years, is that correct?
That's correct. So it'll be reviewed every 5 years.
So I suppose we need a motion to...
Richard?
Yeah, and of course, if things change, the biggest thing that changed after COVID was that we had private physicians that were using space. We were paying taxes on that. Since COVID, there's been a lot of changes in the structure of healthcare and our ability to get people to come here, especially specialists. So if, say, next year, we're able to attract, I don't know, a private ear, nose, and throat person, and they want an office on our campus, we certainly would communicate to Nicole that we're willing to pay taxes on that. Everything right now on our campus is only used for us, other than the spaces that aren't owned by us, which I think the town is collecting taxes on. And of course, home hospice services, they rent a space they're a not-for-profit, that's recent. They would also fall under state law.
And I would add that there is annual reporting that the hospital is required to do every April and every June, which is also another way in which we can catch changes like that, is through that annual reporting process.
Great. Anybody else have any questions about that? All right, you were about to make a motion?
I motion that we approve the pilot program. We have our community announcement.
And also allow me to sign on the board's behalf.
So,
Then I'll second it. All those in favor? Aye. All right, thank you. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, revaluation contract.
Yep, so we are looking to move our revaluation services contract from Corcoran Associates to Vision. Vision is the company that is providing us our new assessing database. So it's the software that we use to keep track of all of the property records that we have. It helps us to, track building permit values and those changes. It's incredibly important. Can't really overstate how important it is. That once Vision completes that, having them do the revaluation actually makes an awful lot of sense, because that is going to essentially put them in the position where they have to prove out their work. Not only have they converted all our data into their database, but they're going to have to prove that all that conversion was correct. And the best way to do that is through a revaluation process.
Questions? All right, need a motion to?
Same motion, yep.
I'll make a motion to accept that proposal and authorize you to sign off on it.
Thank you.
Second. Those in favor? Thanks, Nicole. Now we have several monies to expend.
Yes.
Is it? Yes. Can we do a blanket motion?
You absolutely
We have to
can.
name them all off?
No, I don't
$5?
think so, unless you want to discuss any of them in particular.
Maybe just a quick rundown. These have all been discussed through
Yep.
different committees.
Yeah, this has all gone through the CIP process, it's gone through the budget committee, it's gone through the select board, and there's nothing here that'll be a surprise to anybody. These are monies that we've already expended out of the budget, and we're looking for reimbursement through the trustees of the trust fund.
Remind me what the West Peterborough Expendable Trust Fund is supporting?
The West
Infrastructure.
Peter, that is infrastructure that was approved through the TIF district's plan. So any of those infrastructure upgrades or anything that is in that plan, those funds can be used towards that.
No, I understand, but are there specific projects that we are targeting in that regard?
So that $12,000, I believe that a lot of that went to Texera Park, but I'm not 100% sure exactly what all of that went to. But it's work that's been done by, sorry.
It's actually
Oh, you
road
got it?
projects.
Oh, it's the road
It's
project.
the curbing,
Oh, thank you.
completion of the curbing and road work. That, I can bring in the actual receipts if you'd like to see them.
No, that's fine.
Texera Park hasn't
The
started yet.
porta potty issue, $4,800 for porta potties. Is that just for the summer?
That's for, yes, that's for the season.
They're year-round, they're out there right now.
Yeah, they're here.
But they are year-round?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we had a lot of discussion about that.
You want more?
More permanent thing.
People appreciate it. Is that it? Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one. Why would we use $260,000 from the fleet management reserve if the quote is $235,000?
The vehicle won't be ready for 2 years. The price is gonna go up.
They can't give us a firm price?
It won't be ready to ship and build for 2 years. But they ordered it.
This is our deposit?
Yes.
We're not making the payment yet, we're just authorizing the order.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve these expenditures.
Second.
All those in favor? Great. Moving on.
Appointment, Helen Fairman.
I know her,
Yeah.
She's actually.
I have several times. Yeah, I'll make a motion that we appoint Helen to the Recreation Committee.
A second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. No other volunteers, that's great. And then minutes from December 17th, I'd make a motion to approve those as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I did have one really quick note, I'm sorry. Miss
Yep.
Francie Von Mertens had reached out that they had misstated that it was not Deirdre Williams, I think, it was D someone else, and she'd given me that name, so I can add that correct name in 30 minutes.
Excellent. All right, no break. We're already late for budget committee, and with that, I'll hand the meeting over to Rick Lesser, the chair of the committee, and he can introduce everybody. Anybody can join us up at the table.
Great. Thanks, Tyler. So our budget committee members here tonight, Dave Odman and Tony Zale and Al Lenos are over there. Leslie Lewis to my right, Carl Mazzino, Mary Clark, and Dick Reynolds. I think Don Parkhurst is the only person we're missing tonight. A couple of quick things before we get into the CIP presentation. We had some minutes from December 17th, and people have had a chance to look at those. But someone like to make comment about those? Mary, any comments there, or we okay?
I'm not sure we all saw them.
Okay.
I just gave them to you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For
Okay,
your
so why don't we
comments
defer that?
before I send them
I'm
out to
sorry.
the committee.
I thought that was,
Sorry for
so we'll
the
defer that to
clarification.
next meeting.
Next time.
My other hat is the chairman of the CIP committee. So I would like, as chairman of the CIP committee, to present to the select board and the budget committee our recommendations. So the CIP committee comprises of myself, Leandra McDonald, who's our vice chair this year. Dave Odman is also on the committee. We also have 3 members of the planning board, Sarah Steinberg-Heller, Gary Gorski, and Carl Staley, and also James Kelly. And the reason we have planning board members is because we're technically or not technically, we are a subcommittee of the planning board, and state statute requires that at least one person from planning board is on the members, on our committee. And just, again, quick background on CIP. We're the Capital Improvement Plan Committee. We're responsible for looking at expenses that the town is proposing of $10,000 or more. We're one of the very few town committees, maybe not the only one, that looks forward, not only the current fiscal year 26, but we are tasked with looking at the next 6 years as well of expenses. And I won't bore you with all the details, you can read those there, the things that we cover. But basically, our basic responsibility, we hear from each of the department heads and the administration for their views on what is going to be expended, not only this year, but going forward. And spoiler alert, the committee unanimously approved the slides that I'm going to be presenting to you. And just again, parenthetically, I think the department heads and the administration really worked very hard and very diligently to try to minimize costs. You know, the big elephant in the room is our fire bond that we approved last year. So we've really, everyone has really made a really strong effort to minimize expenses going forward. As we go through each slide, please don't hesitate if you have a question as we talk through each slide, so we don't have to go back and forth. Again, probably the most important thing to remember is that over the last couple of years, CIP has really made a strong effort to utilize capital reserve funds rather than bonding, especially, you know, the era of cheap money went away a couple of years ago, and we've all realized that we can really, in the long run, save the town a lot of money by using capital reserve and minimizing the use of bonding. Also, because of the situation, the other important thing to note is that IT department, GIS, the recreation department, and fire departments all shifted there are 26 warrant article requests to either eliminate them or going forward into fiscal year 27 or beyond. And again, as it's noted there, this, we save $500,000, and actually the total warrant article requests this year are $153,000 less than last year.
Can I just note,
Please.
you're not actually saving money, you're just pushing money, right? I mean,
Well-
it's not like that 500,000 went away.
Correct.
It just.
Correct.
And so, but I guess I'm sure you're gonna show us a slide that has the out years, right?
Right, we'll be looking at that. And so here are the warrant articles, basically showing the bonds that have been approved at prior meetings.
Can you switch that down?
I can't. It's the projector, it's not the.
And the, you know, the big point counteracting that $500,000 of savings is the ambulance revolving fund has showed up again. Last year, because of a lot of personnel issues and other issues with the fire and ambulance, we eliminated the revolving fund there, but that's shown up again. So that's kind of a balance to the $500,000 that we are saving for fiscal year 26. So, and we'll have lots of discussion, I'm sure, on that going forward in our budget meetings. And this slide just shows basically the bonds that we have approved in prior town meetings. And again, we're hoping that if you look, we have a couple of big hits coming up because of the fire bond. As far as the projected tax rate impact, the bottom line there, for 26, it'll be $219 per thousand for the town, but then you can see we start to slide down, $213, and hopefully if all these numbers work out, by the time we get up to fiscal year 2031, we'll have reduced that considerably down to $1.53.
If I can just interject here, that tax rate impact is based on the town's current valuation for FY 26, 27, 28, all those out years. So that valuation is going to change. Inevitably, it's going to change. So you can look at that as kind of giving you a little bit of a roadmap, but it's not, don't expect that number to be the actual impact, the actual dollar impact on the tax rate.
Right, and I should also mention the Cold Stone Spring bond came on board this year as well, so that had a negative impact short term, but again, going forward, we'll hopefully see a reduction in those rates.
On the subject of the tax rate, I'm still not sure what that number is. How does this differ? You say the tax rate impact. How is it different from the tax rate?
This is the tax rate impact.
Just would be an increase.
Just of the bonds. It's not that, that's
the
not
effect of the bond, of
Yes,
this column.
Yep.
Okay.
Right, just strictly bonds.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Bill?
Well, I thought that Cold Stone Springs bond was going to be completely supported by water.
It is.
So what, that affect
Okay.
the tax rate?
It's not
I'm
affecting
sorry.
the tax rate. The tax rate is only including
The
the town hall renovation of the fire station.
All right, well, Rick.
I'm sorry, yeah, no, I misspoke there. Thank you for correcting that. Okay, another question there. So some of these things we can go pretty quickly. So pool improvement, we hired a new rec director, as everybody knows now, Craig Fraley is on board. And some of these things, we just stayed flat, letting him review that. The same thing will happen when we look at the rec department numbers. So the analysis there on the pool, we all know that repairs are still required annually, and this is pretty steady there, so I'm not sure there's anything really to discuss there. GIS, as I previously mentioned, Fosh is comfortable on the expenditure from last year, covering us for the next couple of years, so we're good there for the next 3 fiscals. As far as needing any warrant articles to support the new flyover.
I'm sorry, so if we just spent 88,000, we're planning on spending 95,000, right? That's what this says?
Yes.
Are we actually gonna where are we getting the 95,000 if we're not appropriating money in the out years?
I guess the 57 from fiscal year 29 and then the fiscal year 30 will cover that, is that millions?
40 plus 57.
If the warrant articles in FY '29 going forward will have to be larger than they have been in the past. They've been 18,500 steady for years to save up for every 5 to 7 years flyover cost for the GIS mapping. So we're suggesting to not raise and appropriate anything for this capital reserve for 3 years and then increasing the request to a $40,000 just to get us where we need to be able to pay for that.
That sounds like a change in policy, that we were trying to smooth the
Yes.
spending.
That's exactly what that's doing, Carl. By moving that 40,000 out, by moving that out, it starts to save money to keep the increase for next year lower. And the 40,000 hits fiscal year 29 and 30, where the tax rate impact is going lower. So adding it in there makes sense from a leveling out standpoint.
Right. Well, I don't see leveling out if you have 0, 0, 0.
You're just looking at one small piece of it.
Right, on a townwide basis.
Okay, and that's what, so early on, what Dick said was the 3 or 4 departments moved things out into the out years where the capital funding was going to be lower, and where the capital funding for the next couple of years is very high. So by moving those out, reduces this year's, increases those years, and it does in fact lead to more level funding for capital over the next 6 years. Again, it's all, it's predicted, it's best hope, but that's what the purpose is of doing that.
Yeah, don't love the word hope.
Yeah.
I think
But that's how.
in the scheme of things, 19 grand is not gonna swing the budget a lot, and I feel like you're betting that nothing bad will happen between now and FY '29, and I feel like the CIP, I feel like we made these mistakes when I was the chair of CIP 15 years ago.
That particular item is a GIS flyover. They just finished one.
No, I get it.
There's no reason to have to do it. When you get to the other ones where there are big ticket items, most of the departments were pretty careful to try and save enough money so that if they get into an emergency, that they can deal with an emergency, and at the same time push those other capital expenditures out for a few years.
Well, of course, I'll defer to the experts, but I think the whole point of the CIP, building the CIP like this, is to not make those predictive choices that blow up in your face later. But you
And I don't
guys
think that
went through the whole thing. So.
I don't believe the CIP has done that to you. That's what I'm
Well,
trying to tell
I
you.
think not appropriating any money for 3 years. I personally.
Not appropriating any money for 3 years for something that's only bought every 4 years isn't going to blow up in your face.
Well, it's not just this, but the other ones.
Well, then we
I'm just saying, like,
deal with the other ones when we
point
get to it.
Well, maybe we should
I don't
backtrack to
want
looking
to
at the town
belabor. I don't want to
numbers.
belabor this. I just want to go on record as saying this is a bad policy to push money when it really doesn't add up to that much money, that much savings.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a change in policy from the way I see it. That what you're doing is you're trying to talk about what is the whole budget going to be in the future and trying to smooth that out as opposed to smooth out the pieces that you're actually looking at.
Well, we were looking at the townwide analysis, and, again, Dave's point, if you just look at the flyover number, that does look like an aberration, but if you can look at the total of all warrant articles, we've hopefully, taken the right path. We're taking them down from fiscal 27 of over 2 million, and then we're down to 1.4, 1 point, and then we pop up 1.8. We start to build up through some other things too. But I think that, to Dave's point, that is a fairly flat, to my mind at least, overall. We've tried to smooth that.
I think I'm in the same position you are on this.
Right.
And we should move on.
Yeah, we'll have
It's
further
our-
discussion of that, certainly. This is CIP is only advisory to the budget committee, which is also advisory. Not a lot of changes here. They've been budgeting for a while on buying a new cruiser this year, and that's their only capital expense. These other expenses, I think, are fairly representative of last year's budget. I think there have been major changes here.
I'm sorry, are we buying an EV for the police department?
Yes.
Yeah, the chief's, we decided that last year.
Okay.
That's the chief's car.
It seems like a vanity thing to me, but, okay.
It's the future. It's all the same money. Start getting on board now, or?
Okay. I know, ridiculous. Okay.
It's actually a little less than a regular pickup truck. Outfitted.
I suppose you don't have to ever change the oil, so that's a win.
Yep, that's right.
As far as the fire department, they had planned on purchasing an ambulance this year, and again, similar situation to a lot of these vehicles. We have orders that have to go in like 12 months in advance or longer, so hopefully that $500,000 comes to be. I think it's already been ordered.
It was ordered December of '22.
Oh, okay. It was ordered quite a while ago. And hopefully it shows up this year.
That's a replacement vehicle?
Yes. All of our ambulances have over 200,000 miles on them now.
Is there any value to the used one that we could realize?
Maybe some small value to the vehicle that we retire, yes.
Those are diesel, right?
Believe so.
Good old American diesel.
We're German.
Oh.
And as I mentioned earlier, the warrant article revenue, we're requesting to be reinstated for this year. As we know, the ambulance revolving funds had a lot of funding issues. Once a moneymaker is no longer that, so we agree with the administration that the town has to shoulder some of this responsibility, and we're suggesting that we reinstate the warrant articles going forward for the ambulance.
Didn't I see the revolving fund on the previous slide?
Yes.
Or did I?
The revolving fund is on one of the early slides.
Okay. Yeah,
We're
so
we're using the revolving fund essentially as a capital reserve fund in this particular instance, because it exists and it can be used that way, in supporting the ambulance service.
So the revolving fund used to be run through actual revenue that the ambulance was generating, right?
Correct.
So now we're taking money from warrant articles and putting it in the revolving?
We're using it as if it were another one of the capital reserve funds. The revolving fund was established in such a way as you could run the ambulance service from it, or you can use it to buy equipment or anything else that it needs. It's very open-ended.
Okay.
So rather than create another fund, we're using the existing revolving fund.
Got it.
As I mentioned earlier, we're all set with ambulance. We'll go to fire, and Chief Walker and Nicole administration decided that we did not have to have any capital expenses for fiscal year '26, and that got zeroed out. And then you can see going forward for the next 4 or 5 years, we'll start to build up. We have some very big expenses coming up theoretically when we get into the decade of the 30s. We're going to buy a hook and ladder truck at some point, so that's why you'll see those numbers at the end start to really pop up.
What is the planned purchase date on that?
I think we ended up to like 33 or 34. Is that right?
35. I think it's 33.
So 30s at any rate.
So can you give me a guesstimate of, so if we say, for instance, that, whatever this is, the utility truck is going to cost $100,000, what do you think the percent change is going to be by the time we actually order it? 20%? 25? I know, but I mean, I guess my point is why are we putting in numbers that are real today and without padding them with like some kind of historical knowledge we have of what happens over time to the cost of vehicles? Like, shouldn't it be an estimate of what the actual is gonna be later and not today's price? Especially if it's 5 years out.
I think those are,
Those are actual,
Those
those
are-
are estimates of what it probably
Yeah.
maybe would cost?
yeah. Well, for instance, a chief's vehicle, which right now might be $80,000 or $90,000, is slated for 120, so that makes sense.
Did someone confirm that?
Well, I think we have to, when we meet with the fire department, we'll go over all these again.
Okay.
You know, Chief's not here tonight, so I'm not sure.
We can confirm it. I would say that every department who's approached us builds in some contingency, knowing, some escalation, knowing that whether it's vehicle or equipment, it's very likely going to inflate over time. What that percent is, I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head.
No, I'm not, no one's gonna hold you to this 100 grand, but I'm just wanting to know that we're actually projecting what the cost will be and not using today's numbers.
Do we currently have a ladder truck that is rated for a certain height?
Yes.
Yeah, fiscal year 34, actually, according to my notes here, is that when we're planning on that ladder truck. And again, rec, we've kind of deferred to Craig until he can kind of come on board. Seth was in agreement that we didn't have to do anything for fiscal year 26. The other thing to mention here is we're having some issues with the lights on the outdoor fields at Adams. And I think they've already hired, I'm not a consultant, Dave, or Tony, you can speak to this a little bit. As far as who we've hired somebody to, we haven't hired a consultant per se, correct?
They're supposed to do the inspection on the light poles themselves.
Oh, there's someone to do the
Because
inspection.
some of those poles have been there for 60-plus years, Dave? Maybe. Yeah.
Right.
So they won't, before they address the lights, they want to see the condition of the poles to get a full understanding of what the potential project would be.
And again, based on that report, we're going to be looking at maybe hiring a consultant to suggest the best way to address the light issue there. DPW continues to improve the fleet. From what I understand, from reports from Seth, they've really done a wonderful job in maintaining the current fleet, trying to keep trucks going as long as possible, but obviously with the size of this fleet, needs are out there. We have 3 trucks planned for fiscal year 26.
Rick, I know last year we talked to Seth about how they were doing more in-house work and cross-training staff and relying less on contractors. Is that still the case going forward?
That's my understanding, yes. Bridge, dam, and culvert. Nothing planned for this year, so the warrant article revenues remains, it's actually down a little bit for this year, but we have some big projects coming up. Dublin Road and Mr. Kennedy's Pine Street. He's very anxious to see that happen, and that's going to be a big ticket item.
What street do you live on?
So I sneak that one by. But I can personally attest that that work is much needed. The road system upgrades, as most people know, we've really made or Seth and his department have made a big effort to get our town-wide roads up to standards. They were really rough shape, but the $400,000 that we've been allocating per year has really gone a long way to improving the roads. And we're planning on continuing that for at least the next couple of years. I think the original plan was through 28. And to be discussed will be what we need to do going forward, if anything, in this area. Recycling center, there's nothing really too exciting happening here. So they had the major purchase last year doing that cold storage trailer, but going forward is basically just the expense of recycling tires is minimal expense here. And as you can see, we get fees for motor vehicles to help build up the balances in this area. Similarly, transportation improvement capital reserves, this is all funded by fees for motor vehicles, so there's no impact on the town budget. And we've got a nice little reserve there, and I'm sure planning and Danica's team will find some good uses for that money going forward, but right now, there's nothing in the works.
I'll be interested to hear from you, Danica, on that, because 34 grand is not that much money. It's like half a square of sidewalk.
Each year? Fees for motor
We've
vehicles?
got a
Yeah, but look at the
balance.
balance.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It's not, 300 grand a year.
Yeah, it's not a huge amount. I don't think it's ever been used, actually, but it could certainly help offset some work. Whether it's matching grants or something that Seth's doing for a sidewalk project or bike infrastructure.
Okay,
Kate, wasn't that what we used for a little bit of that for the bike racks?
Those were Greater Downtown TIF funds, because they were all located in the downtown.
But so
TIF.
why aren't we doing something with pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure?
Nothing's been put forward yet.
By whom? Who would it be put?
Usually, well, I think it was initially intended to be put forward by town citizens, and then there was some discussion on whether or not there should be some language set up on what the confines for how it be used, a little more specific than just pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. It's never been used.
Why don't we start using it?
we have to come up with a project. Can we make,
Couldn't we use it to link the fire station area to the Shaw's parking lot?
Or do bike lanes?
Hypothetically,
You
if
know,
we
painted bike
find
lanes?
ourselves needing the additional funds, we could tap into that. But it is built into the fire station project as is.
Interesting.
I'm sorry, or like painted bike lanes or, safer curb cuts and
The
things like that.
problem-
There's so many.
We have looked into painted bike lanes. The cost to do the paint every year, even just on a 1 mile strip, would eat that entire amount of money, and then, that we receive from the motor vehicle registrations. And it has to be redone every year because salt, sand, plowing will scrape up all that paint. So kind of decided that it wasn't the best investment to do that. We also had trouble finding a contractor that'd be willing to come out and do such a small run of lane, because really a mile or so is not very far, and contractors would much rather do much larger contracts.
So, but we have this like $250,000 sitting there.
We do. So right now, for
Don't worry,
instance, we
Kate, we'll
do.
find it.
I'm looking at that like, whoa, wait a minute. Those
So
are things that
we've
people
been,
like.
we've been very focused on the downtown sidewalks, and all of that money that we've been using for redoing downtown sidewalks has been coming out of the downtown TIF because we have those
Right.
funds available. But if we need to do repairs to sidewalks, say out on Route 202 and 136 and all that after that bridge is reconstructed, because we know the state's not going to put that back, we'll be able to tap into this money to do that work, because there won't be any other funds to address that with.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily encourage citizens to come forward with ways to spend.
I'm not recommending that.
Okay.
I think that was the initial, that was my understanding of why it was set up.
I think on the subcommittee meeting too, there were two things that I recall. One was that there was a feeling that any project should come through planning committee. And the second was, and we had lots of discussions about this, is with the development out off of Rose Farm Road, there's no sidewalks, there's no crosswalk, and that will be expensive to try and figure out, if you put all those families down there, how are you gonna get them across Route 202 to school? And that, there's not, as far as I know, the state's not gonna come up with money to pay for our crosswalk. We'll have enough trouble getting them to approve it. Maybe we could use that money to pay for it, and at least get the state to approve us putting a crosswalk across their highway. But that's one of the big ones, and that would eat up a lot of it.
Yeah, that would, absolutely.
But I believe most of the discussion in our committee was about starting those from planning.
The other area that may be in a similar situation is whether there's any traffic calming device once the new fire station is up and running in terms of on Route 101.
And on the street.
There's sidewalks there.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Okay.
You're all right.
We're almost done. So departmental budget items, there are only a couple of key items here, and that comes from IT. Bosch is planning on a couple of big storage units, 25 grand apiece. And also, as I mentioned earlier, the lighting inspection for the fields at $15,000. And yeah, otherwise, there's just a couple of smaller numbers there for IT.
Yeah, for lighting.
Water and sewer, these are all funded by user fees, so there's no impact on the town budget. And then we get into the wonderful world of TIFs. The South Peterborough TIF, their big project is going to be working on the bridge that goes from Old Sharon Road to New Falls. And as you can see, that's a pretty big number. There's a gigantic or major water main that's on there, and that's the most important piece of that. That needs to be made sure that's refurbished and it's in good shape. And they'll be rehabbing the bridge also to make it a little more user-friendly for pedestrians. And again, the TIF, and all three of our TIFs, these funds come out of the specific TIF district that we're talking about, not from the general taxation.
Can you describe what this annual support of planning is?
That's to offset the cost of the planning department, essentially. Planning for all of these different projects. It's a general fund offset.
Okay. Lily, I thought we weren't doing that anymore, like taking, I thought all the budgets, before you, we're taking a lot of money out of a bunch of different places for admin support.
Oh, well, budgeting was being done across different enterprise funds and revolving funds for sure to support salaries in different departments. This has been an annual, essentially, contribution from the TIFs to the general fund. So each TIF was charged $10,000. So it was $30,000 in revenue to support the efforts of mostly Danica's work in managing all of the TIF projects, and she has many meetings with the TIF representatives.
Are you, my brain skipped over a bit.
No, that's okay. So it comes in as general fund revenue, but it is paid by the three different TIFs.
Okay.
And will no longer be paid by the West Peterborough, because West Peterborough sunsetted last month.
Yeah, sunset.
Yep.
And the major expenses here are the bond payments for the GAR building and also, the parking lot, I should say, for the GAR, and also the bond payment on our Main Street Bridge. And then going forward, the biggie is Grove Street and Main Street paving project. That's pretty big happening this year. So visioning improvements alongside that.
Can you go into a little bit more detail on that $300,000 number?
I'd like to defer to Danica on that, the visioning.
The bulk of that will be adding safety improvements and pedestrian improvements along Depot Street, and particularly at the intersection next to Roy's. As you look across Main Street to Summer Street, that has some pretty serious safety concerns, and so the bulk of those funds are being applied to that area, where we're going to be looking at realigning that crosswalk for safety, shortening it, and also adding some bump outs so that cars can approach better. There will be some small aesthetics, like adding maybe a couple bushes, low bushes that you can see over it. The bulk of it, though, is going to be sidewalk and engineering in the crosswalk.
And that's called visioning improvements because you had a series of visioning.
Right, in
outreach.
2022, we did a downtown visioning project to look at what those improvements should be. Many of them were safety. There are some aesthetic that the downtown TIF supports, but safety is certainly going to take merit and be prioritized right now.
All right.
And then finally, the West Peterborough TIF. And as we mentioned earlier, this is sunsetting, it's going away. We still have some money in there. And we'll be dedicating that money to just basically continuing plowing, maintaining the parks, street lighting maintenance, and any other projects that come up. But they've got a healthy balance in there right now.
Roughly what kind of interest are we gaining on balances on a TIF district.
These are now being held by the trustees of the trust. I honestly,
These are all in the money market account.
yeah,
Yeah.
4.12.
it is,
Yeah.
it is not what we're getting at the,
So I'm getting at my money market.
Why are TIF monies being used to refurbish the Mason Lodge parking lot?
We own the bottom, the town of Peterborough owns the bottom lot there.
Oh, okay.
So that's actually a public parking space, parking area.
Is correct that they don't own the parking lot. There's a lease agreement which was signed about 8 years ago that allows them to use it. And we have to, the Masonic Lodge has to pay to plow it because the town's not paying to plow it, which I think is problematic. But it's not owned by the town, it's owned by the Masonic Lodge.
So which is it?
I'll have to go review the documentation.
curbing and paving that was done.
I can-
Yeah,
There was curbing and paving that was done.
I can tell you it's not owned by the town, it's a legal agreement, allows the town to use it in lieu of, not in lieu of, but because the town paid to have it paid, but we, in lieu of that, we allow the town to use it for parking, but it's not owned by the town.
I know we shouldn't go too far in this, but why is the town doesn't use that parking lot?
Yes, it does. I believe it's used for, goes back a couple of town administrators ago, but it's used for the parking for, basically for the green grocers. The employees tend to park there and they walk up, so they don't include their parking, they don't obligate their parking for their employees, but that's how I see using a parking lot the
Yeah,
most.
that's good. That's true.
It's good. Thanks.
Okay,
Quick question, park support, is that just Texera or something else?
That's just Texera.
How's that money being spent?
It's the cost of mowing and landscaping.
Okay.
any other questions?
Yeah.
Could be a meadow, all there.
Yeah, mowing, yeah. But you don't,
Okay.
That concludes my presentation. Are there any other further questions, comments, criticisms? I get it.
All right.
Thank you. Now I will take my CIP hat off and put on my budget hat again. And I think that concludes the business for tonight, I believe. Did
I
I miss
have
anything?
one more very brief slideshow, if you don't mind.
Love it.
Yeah, this is very brief, I promise. That is the first of 4 slides. Here's the second. So you recall I've sent out, the purpose of tonight's presentation is just looking at the largest drivers of the proposed operating budget. The total proposed to raise and expend through taxation is up at $999,995. $950,591 of that is just the fire station bond payment, which is now part of the operating budget. The balance of the operating budget increase, so with it, in other words, if you were to take that bond payment out, our operating budget is only increased or proposed increase of $49,404. That's 0.33% over last year's budget. So where is that coming from? Again, debt service, that's our biggest increase. The rest of it, our health insurance premiums are up 10.5%.
10%.
But we have held that line pretty level by making adjustments for what we were hoping would be a status quo and the actual employees taking various types of benefits. That number may change a bit though, because we have some new hires coming on this month, and so a question of will they be taking family plans or sticking with singles or maybe not taking any plan at all, we could hope. We'll see how that goes. Workers' compensation, that premium is up 12%. Property and liability is up 9%, but unemployment is down 10%, which is some nice news to get. Our electricity is down.
I'm sorry, is that your unemployment tax, or is it actual people applying for unemployment?
Basically our insurance,
Okay.
our unemployment insurance. Our electricity costs are down, not a huge amount, but it's nice again to see that going down. Heating fuels are actual uses. We generate those from actual usage numbers multiplied by our current rate. Those are mostly down or stable. Diesel's our biggest one, that we're estimating that at $3.47 per gallon. Gasoline's $3.16 per gallon. Wood pellets and wood chips provide the balance of, most of the balance of our heating. Those are pretty stable. Cost of living, the number in merit, we used the same number as we did last year, just to enter that into the budget, which is a 2% COLA and 2% merit. Our Northeast CPI is at 3.5% when we started this whole process. We learned the Social Security CPI, which goes into effect this month, is at 2.5%. So a little bit of a reverse from where we were last year, but relatively close. The police department, in the New Hampshire retirement system, we've got some really good news. Our police contributions for police is down 0.33%, fire is down 1.2%, and the rest of the full-time employees is down 0.78%, which is remarkable news. Those rarely have ever gone down.
Is that because of staffing?
I think they realized some good investments from what I
They
understand.
do a
Yeah.
biennial actuarial evaluation.
Yeah.
So it's based off of the people that they're paying now and how much money is coming in and their investments.
And their investments.
It has only gone down once, I think,
Since you've
in
been
the
doing
last
this, right?
20 years.
Yeah. It's
So
really
it's incredible.
surprising.
These will be the rates for the next 2 years.
Great.
Is workers' comp driven by claims?
For the pool, yes, as well as for ourselves. So there's a little bit of a formula, but yeah, it's all driven by claims.
What's in the pool?
So a number of other municipalities are in the same pool.
Okay.
Our pool is causing the workers' comp.
No, not Adam's pool, sorry. Oh, no.
I understood.
At least I'm here for council.
I think one of your early slides showed what the tax rate effect would be on the CIP. Do you remember how much that total amount was? Because this is $1 million exactly. I'm just wondering if we can get the tax rate impact of both budgets.
We can certainly get that for you.
I can actually give it to you right now.
That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
I have-
do you have the RNA there? Because I can pull it up, but.
The, if all of the warrant articles that were presented by Rick tonight were put on the warrant, and this budget that we'll be presenting over the next several weeks were to all pass, the total amount to be raised and appropriated, netting out the non-tax revenues, is $12,188,743. And without using any fund balance and without using any assumptions and increase to assessed value, so those are two big ifs, the increase in your tax rate is $1.90.
And we know there will be an increase to assessed valuation. We just approved the revaluation contract. That will be happening this fall. Our current equalized valuation ratio, meaning the ratio of what our assessed values are compared to market value, we already know that's below 70%. As of right now.
Yeah.
So that means that we're going to have over 30% evaluation added on, more than likely.
And we also know that all the value from West Peterborough will now be rolled back into the
As well.
town assessed value, and that's over $37 million in value. So just with an assumption of the West Peterborough coming in, no other changes to assessed value, and no fund balance, the tax rate increase would be $1.32.
Did you say you contracted with an assessing company?
Yes. Yeah, that was earlier, and I was in the selectmen's meeting portion of tonight.
But that's not happening until the fall.
That will happen in the fall, but that's also when we'll be sending out tax bills based on the budget that you're looking at right
When you
now.
say that will happen, they will have completed the assessment?
Yes, the revaluation will be done.
By fall, it will be done.
Has to be done before September 1st.
So the December bill.
The December bill, correct.
Right, we'll set the rate sometime in
That's
October.
good news.
Any kind of guesstimate on new properties coming online? I know we have a lot of construction going on.
There's a lot that is intended to be finished in the coming year. We haven't had a lot of new projects coming to planning board seeking approval, but we're seeing a lot getting wrapped up, like Woodman's, Ghost Farm Road,
And those are the ones that are going to have the biggest impact, are the ones that receive their occupancy permit, particularly before April 1st.
we have to do it before April 1st.
Well, and anything after last April 1st.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
So will all of these overheads be available on the select board page of the town website?
I mean, as far as the slide goes, happy to send the slides out to the budget committee and select board after the
So
meeting.
they're not going to be on the select board, or will they be on the website though, on the select board?
I
I don't need them sent to
know.
me, I just was hoping they'd be available to.
Oh, sure, I can put some of this stuff up, I mean, or we can send it out to you.
On the budget page?
Yeah, we can put it on the budget page, that probably makes more sense.
Budget committee page, that way people.
Yep.
Yep.
Logically.
Does that include all this, the CIP overheads as well?
That we can have all that uploaded there, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And then,
What's the current fund balance? Current fund balance?
The current fund
Pretty
balance
skinny right now.
is,
It's like 400,000 or 500,000.
it's 562,000, I
I was
think.
gonna say, it's closer to six.
Yes, it's 562,000.
Thank you.
What was it? I'm sorry.
562,000. Right now, there's no fund balance available to use for next rate's tax rate setting unless we have, the only thing that will drive availability is what we don't spend in our current year's expenditure budget.
And current fiscal is at 6:30, is that?
Yep, through 6:30, so we're halfway through.
Any other questions?
Tighten your belts, friends. That's what we're doing.
Yep. And that's, and I think that's reflected very well in this budget that you received last month and that we'll be going through. The department directors knew exactly what they needed to do. Lily and I did very little tweaking through our meetings. They all came in with very tight budgets, and I think you'll be pleased with what they have to offer you. And then the last thing I want to go through, here's our last slide. The meeting schedule, the one I sent you out on Friday, had some incorrect dates. ITGIS, PEG, blah, blah, blah. All those are going to be on January 21st. Fire and ambulance, that will be the last meeting. Because we have some decisions that the selectmen will need to make before we're ready to finalize that budget and bring that to you. I have copies of the correct meeting schedule printed out if you'd like to grab one on your way out.
Great.
Or you can pass them along, whatever works.
Essentially, it's every Tuesday from now until
Yep.
forever.
5:30.
But we do have, a couple of snow days built in, just in case.
I just have one other comment, and that is when we looked at the number for the ambulance service, we understood that the circumstances have changed from what they used to be. And the proposal seems to be that we're going to keep the same ambulance service we have right now and absorb the costs for taxpayers.
That is what we've presented so far in the draft budget. Like I said, the selectmen still have a few decisions to make, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get that done before we're ready to present the fire department's budget.
I don't disagree with that process, I'm just want to be clear that's what's going on.
That's what you've been presented so far, is just a static quo level of service.
Is this only date change?
Okay.
Anything else?
Since-
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Could
I'm sorry, yes, please.
Could copies of what's been presented by Danica and what's been presented by you be available to the taxpayers?
Yes, they'll be uploaded to the budget committee's page on the
Be on the
website.
budget committee page.
On one other observation, I noticed in the town dispatch, the newsletter that goes out that it lists all the school board meetings, but it doesn't list these meetings. I wonder if we could list those in the dispatch as well, these budget hearing meetings.
Well, ours are done in conjunction with all, well, I should say that.
No, but it doesn't say which.
Oh, as far as the specifics, as far as what department you're asking, or just generally?
These are budget hearing meetings? you know, the dispatch lists all the school board meetings, but it doesn't list these meetings.
It doesn't list the school board's meetings. Today's dispatch listed all of their public hearing dates and town meeting dates, and district meeting dates.
Right.
It also listed the town's public hearing and town meeting dates as well.
Right, but it didn't list these. Could the dispatch list these as well, so the taxpayers are aware?
So, so the same email accounts that get the dispatch also get the selectmen's agendas, which included all of these.
Right, but I would think it would be helpful to publicize these dates as well as the school budget meetings.
Does that go out monthly?
It goes out roughly twice a month.
I just got mine, so I noticed that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll also notice that there was a crowd here earlier. They all left. And who cares about this stuff? I don't care about it. We're discussing their money.
If I could answer your question, I think the taxpayers care about it.
Well, but they all left. They're all.
Oh, excuse me, I'm still here.
They're watching us on TV.
You're an exception.
I know there was like 50 people here and they all left.
That's
Yeah.
right.
That doesn't absolve us of
course.
giving them as much information as they
And
can.
we try-
It doesn't
try-
cost anything to include it in an email.
So we try to be the representatives and hopefully ask pertinent questions.
Thank you.
All right, I'll second that motion. Are we done?
All those in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I'm liaison to GIS, I can't be here on the 21st. If it messes with.
I mean, I can